So, which is the segue to our original conversation, which is going to be taking place around learning being a surviving mechanism. So what does that mean? As you all see from the title, changing design pedagogies can be ambiguous. Are we talking about changing the design pedagogies, or are we talking about changing design pedagogies? So I think there's going to be a mixture of both. And I would like to talk a little bit about academia and industry collaborations as a part of this changing experience, and a little bit about what kind of methodologies or pedagogies that we are investigating as academics and actually implementing in our design curriculum, and how we use them as a part of the design experience or creating or working with newer pedagogies throughout academia and industry. So apparently, with the latest shift due to pandemic, academia and industry had to reevaluate certain methodologies in order to cope with setbacks that are either time dependent or location dependent or technology dependency. So there's a lot of new unknowns. So we're going to be examining these unknowns and using different pedagogies or methodologies in the education that is helping us understand better how the industry operates and how that information could be relayed into design education. So what is design education? Design is usually to be a linear process, right? Design thinking starts with empathizing, defining, locating certain issues, and then coming up with ideas, prototyping them, testing them, and voila, you got your design. And so is the design education. So we do the same linear pedagogy with the design education, but now it has to change because it not only needs to adapt what the industry is requiring of us, but we also have to cope with the hybrid methodologies or the hybrid ways of working in the academia or in the industry. So how do these two come together? So we got a lot of plan A's, scratch them over, plan B's, scratch them over, plan C's during the pandemic, right? We had to come up with a lot of different technologies, a lot of different weird silences throughout Zoom sessions, things like that. So observing, understanding, practicing all the dynamics of the new paradigm that we're getting into was like a little bit complex for the older generation, a little bit off putting for the newer generation. So myself being probably somewhere in the middle, had a lot of background with industry, with professional practice, as well as a lot of industry collaboration background. I was also in the same mindset. I was in the same spot. So what can we do to integrate a better pedagogy, different methodologies, and creating a virtual interaction, because that's what we needed throughout the pandemic, right? Emotionally, physically. I mean, physical was out the window, of course, but how can we create that and be still proactive about all the adverse circumstances that is revolving around education? And design education is no different. So design is also a shared activity. So we cannot be far away from each other, from our students, from our collaborators. So all of these are basically what we refer to the changing paradigms in design education, and hence the title. So a quick literature review for you guys for the design education. The oldest one that we know as a primary methodology is the Bauhaus, of course, which is basically created its own curriculum view based on 5 fundamental study areas: study of nature, spatial, color, and composition theories, study of materials and tools, construction and representation, and of course, studying of fabrics and materials. And then, many years later, that design is basically becoming more core of all professional training. So it has to be intellectual, it has to be analytic, it has to be formalizable, and it has to be also teachable. So with these, the paradigms are again shifting to a different formats with the later on editions of signature pedagogies, which is basically teaching basic fundamentals as well as being more transformative and creating 3 layers, which are basically the surface structures, deeper structures, and implicit structures for creating a better perception for the concepts that you're working with as a student, as well as the academics, creating more attention to not only the detail, but also what surrounds us the academia in the industry realm and also the interaction. So bringing us to a newer paradigm, which is basically separated into two planes, functional plane as well as the meaning plane. So on the functional plane, the old paradigm suggested that only the primary and secondary functionalities are key. So it is visual side of things as well as the functional side of things. But the newer one, what we understand from the latest changes is it's becoming more inclusive. It's becoming more universal. Form iterations and adaptation is more required than coming up with something and presenting it as your own idea without having all these details. And the meaningful plane is becoming more pragmatic and adaptable. And also cultural values and personal values are into the mix right now. And emotional and cognitive values change accordingly throughout these paradigm shifts. And also, my dissertation was about product semantics. So there's another way to deal with this, enabling students to articulate design problems in various ways. Engaging more in research is also one of the key elements of this approach, and also enhancing the students' abilities to defend their proposals in more competing discourses with the help of the collaborations with industry. So again, a new paradigm is building up with now three different sections: function, meaning, and achievement-based. And personal and subjective values also shifting more to objective values throughout these changes. And industry is helping us understand the realities of the field, as well as the values that we create in different areas. So design now, talking about the linear fashion, is no longer becoming nonlinear and also circular. So how does that happen? In that level, we are creating more collaborations, being more personal to the students, and students are actually learning from cognitive experiences of the industry, as well as their faculty, and as well as their own interaction with the projects that they're working on. They learn better judgment, different decision-making processes, and behavioral consequences, which is basically a part of this. And then this whole transition, as you see here, is happening through this whole process, the circular process. The learning outcome, of course, is what we're after, but also we are learning about emotional responses and emotional decisions in the process. So the most applied methodology for design thinking and design education is basically the same linear approach, but we need to break them down into certain areas where we can follow up on many different features that are more relevant to the topic that they're currently working on. And the way we do that is creating an ambiance, if you will, a better workshop or a better studio environment where design is taking place, and creating action plans as we go. So how was this possible during the pandemic? Well, it was a bit challenging, of course. So like I said earlier on, the interaction between the faculty and the student is key. The physical interaction while you're putting your design layout, while you're discussing about details, while you're discussing about end goals, but also that cognitive process that they need is coming with a lot of burden with the emotional aspect, because during the pandemic, as you all probably lived through and conquered, come with a lot of emotional issues as well. So those emotional issues should also be addressed in an interaction setting like that. So what we did, so as a part of this study, or as a part of this research, while we were collaborating with our industry partners and while we were creating newer design environments, studio environments for our students, is creating a medium where everyone gathers around. So you can consider this middle section right here as the round table. And on this side of the lovely Zoom, we have our annotation tools, and also with screen sharing and TeamViewer and other softwares like that, we actually interact with each other by just not only talking over our projects, but also actually pinpointing certain issues and even start sketching with them. So sketching is one of the key components. Ideation and sketching is one of the key components of design process anyway. So I think this can be utilized in multiple areas, not only in design education, because the way we interact with each other changes the whole meaning of the interaction between the faculty and the students. And we all know what the current generation is all about, doing TikTok, watching shorter videos. So their attention span is also getting smaller and smaller. So what we need to get out of that mindset in order to make them understand how longer processes are actually more beneficial for them. So keeping them engaged is the key. So letting both sides have a say in their design process. How we do that? Well, do you think this is okay? Why is it okay? Okay. Because you actually interact with them and show them what your perspective is or how it could be done and what they are seeing in the real world. So it's kind of like a multiple overlap between the industry partners, if they are involved, or the faculty and the students, almost like a metaphorical way of using the round table. And also, due to those setbacks of not being able to interact on an actual physical table, they need to be able to sketch with you, ideate with you, get confirmation, or going into debates with you by just using a design environment rather than a verbal environment. So that is key. So the experience that you get with all these transitional modalities is key, because if you're not familiar with any of these concepts or any of these tools that you can utilize, you might end up having just a conversation rather than a physical, even though if it's a two-dimensional physical interaction or a virtual one, you still are behind the game. And of course, this starts with the research phase. So when you do research, how do you communicate your takeaways? How do we understand where you want to go to, where you're coming from? So this also helps, this modality also helps us to engage data gathering processes, as well as sharing methods from the students in order to communicate their ideas while you still have a say in the outcome as their instructor, their faculty, or as a collaborator from the industry. So university's power is with research. We have a lot of resources that we can utilize in the university, but we need to know how to use them accurately and effectively. So that's the way we try to create all these interactions with the remote learning and the hybrid methodology. So as you all see here in these images, that are corresponding with the actual part of the pedagogy that I am referring to, is it could be many different things. It could be about implementing a scenario-based approach to their design education or to their project, so that you can start with the research phase and you can talk about a lot of design details that might be at play, procedural or executional, especially if you're working with the industry. It is more to the executional side of things, which universities always falling behind because we're focusing more on the theories and creativity. So that is helping us to move to different layers and putting the human scale in and talking about what human requirements are and how that could actually look like in an actual setting with your design products or design ideas. And like I said, from sketching, ideating, all the way to finalizing your designs. And in the meantime, while you're doing that, you're not only interacting with them with your stylus pens or Apple pencils or whatever tools you're utilizing in order to engage on a virtual environment, almost similar as physical interaction. You're also helping them design with you, but without you taking over the control. And you can see the progress of a model here. We are utilizing computer-aided design, CAD, as well as working with these tools that we utilize on the virtual environment. With all of these visualization tools and techniques that can help us communicate our ideas as their faculty into their ideas and kind of like building that collaborative environment in order to move them forward with their design thinking and design imagination. And also there's the third dimension. We work a lot with models. So what do those models do for us? They give us the physical component of basically any product that we work with. So I'm looking for a product here. So this product can be created in a CAD easily, right? Simple. If you on a table, it works. But you need to see it. There's a heft to it. There's a balance to it. There's a fine-tuned detail to it. And meanings, the product semantics approach especially gives you meanings about these products. So if I press this, ooh. So we need to teach these as well as a part of this whole experience. The physicality aspect cannot be mimicked. Even if you're using animations or if you're using CAD programs to create virtual views for you in an augmented reality or virtual reality environment, this is still not like this. You cannot weigh this as a student while they're developing. So that's the reason model making is key. So how do they make their models in a virtual environment? They have to do it at home, especially throughout the pandemic. But how can we have a say in their model? Because we cannot actually see those or touch those. Well, this is the way. So we kind of like immerse all of our components in the virtual reality, as well as working with different methods and different tools to interact with each other on a 2D versus 3D levels. And everything that we give them as the faculty to make the design happen actually on the third dimension is by just showing them how it can be overlapped with the models that they're working on currently. And our collaborators will have the same ability as well. We give them that ability. And that ability is that everyone might have their own color codes for various purposes. And as we design on CAD, we can also sketch and overlap what we're talking about or what their expectations are in terms of dimensions, in terms of materiality, in terms of design features, and things like that. So everyone have their own color-coded identifiers so that we can trace back to the earlier iterations, the earlier references, by just saving these sessions. And that helps us a lot. And they get constant feedback, not only visual drawn feedback, they're also getting constant feedback in terms of words and phrases, using the proper phraseology or terminology that the industry uses, as well as us, the academic users, like it's any different. Oh, we know that. But again, they're getting that feedback. So that constant feedback is giving them an opportunity to revisit some of the earlier stages to even become more immersive for the whole process. So what we utilize for these is the basic tools that you already probably know, is working on Miro, virtual pinup board basically, that can give you a lot of identifiers about what is expected of them throughout the project. We can also utilize Canvas and Blackboard to give them more written feedback. But the key element here, one of the key elements here, is the digital design tablets and the way you utilize them. And believe me, I work with other professions. It is changing the game, and it should change the game. Even if you're not a designer, even if you're not designing anything, the interaction that is created between you and your students and your collaborators is immense when it comes to actual physical interaction, even if you're 5,000 miles away, which sometimes I was. So that is key, and also constant engagement, because we talked about the emotional and cognitive values of the students. They need to feel engaged, and they need to feel being a part of this is important, not only for us, but for them and for the industry as well. So we need to be more engaging in that regard. So quick takeaways. Design education, or education in general, like we talked about so far, needs to adapt itself to whatever new forms are thrown at. And integrating the hybrid modalities with some of these changing pedagogies, upgraded, if you will, needs to be a part of this. And these shifts usually happen retroactively, which was kind of like killing the game for us. It has to be proactive. So we need to learn more about all the available digital tools and applications and solutions to be more innovative in design education. So for the faculty, key takeaways: promote design intellect. Whatever area you're working in, doesn't matter. You need to promote the design intellect. It's not just about talking about well, you know, design is this, design is that. No, we need more than that. We need the philosophical approach. We need the semantic approach. So we need to prepare the students to adapt multiple scenarios in the real world, to use the common phraseology as well as how they use that common phraseology. And we need to understand the shifting dynamics of the real world. And again, balancing emotional, cognitive, and physical aspects is key for the faculty, because we are the ones in the room that are basically leading the conversation. And also always benefit from the university's resources to participate in any type of collaborative action with industry, with other universities, with individuals. So keep everyone engaged in the process, because universities have immense resources if they're used the right way. And takeaways for the students, again, they have to adapt to the shifting paradigms. They have to learn more about the real world scenarios. Academia might be a little behind on certain areas, as well as it's far ahead than the industry in certain others. So it's important to give them that balance and understanding. And again, they need to learn better how to use the technology and make it a part of their life without being blindsided by it. And of course, they need better and more frequent access to real-time data. That could come from the industry, that could come from the research, wherever it comes from. They need to be able to get a grasp of the real world. And of course, empathy and awareness. We're all talking about inclusivity, universal design, racism, all those things. These cannot happen without empathy and awareness. No matter how you talk about it, as my colleagues here talked about earlier on, we all have a different mindset. We don't start from point A all the time, or a different point A for that matter. So empathy and awareness is key for students. So my research paper, you can find the bibliography of all these methodologies if you're interested. And I thank you so much for your time.
Covered it perfectly. I didn't tell you anything, but I actually could have said something. But
2 minutes over, well, thank you.
yeah. We have the time since we only have 2 speakers, so I wasn't gonna bother you. Perfect.
And if you have questions, I can go back to any slide for any specifics if you're interested in. Yeah.
So when you talk about the digital, we had the iPads.
We'll allow one question, but we're gonna do the questions at the end. But go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Oh, okay. So yeah, when you talk about the digital design tablets, yes. So you're saying that you all were all looking at the exact same material, even though at the exact same time, even though you all were different parts?
Yes.
And whenever you would make a move, someone could see that move.
I actually annotate basically by drawing on their drawings, research, whatever they have. So they can also do it on their own like this. But when you actually start sharing your screens and start the annotations, you can actually take over and give them feedback about certain design details, which you can actually see here, like this particular example. So they were working on a CAD model and we were kind of like referring to certain details, but they don't have to be fine-tuned. It's the sketching or the ideation part is usually simplistic, but to the point. So if you're talking about a certain geometry that is going to be employed with certain products, I can, you know what, I cannot change it on their CAD because it's going to take more time. I can do that, but giving them the sketch right there, right now, and showing them, well, you know what, maybe you should be extruding this like this, so that it becomes this, so that it's going to be more, I don't know, producible or whatever the case is. So that kind of interaction can only take place with a proper tablet, because other tools that you can use, you cannot do this on a mouse. You cannot draw perfectly on a mouse. That's the reason you need the key tools like a stylus pen right here, or if you're using an Apple iPad, you can use the Apple Pencil, the same thing.
And there's no lag. You're saying
there's no lag. Even
most of the time there's no lag, depending on your internet connection.
I can add something to make, and I'm actually for this film I'm talking to you about.
Yeah, right.
Literally everybody is virtual, and we upload videos. I'm able to actually draw on a frame within a 2-second video. I'm able to draw on a frame. They're watching it, and my animation supervisor can actually draw on the same frame with another color. Everybody's watching, and the students can also interact with that. I mean, it's unbelievable what's been happening. And, it's why I'm kind of excited.
And for proprietary purposes, I cannot show you the end products because we are signing NDAs with our collaborators, so the end products cannot be shown here. But I'm showing you certain progress images to get a better feel of how it starts and becomes an actual product in the end by using these methodologies.
Yeah, maybe we can share that a little bit later after the thing. Awesome, man. Thank you so much. That was great. Unbelievable. All right. We're getting so much this morning. And only with 2 espressos. All right. The next presentation.
You're leaving the Q&A for the.
Yeah, hang out. Yeah, we're gonna have a Q&A, for sure. Yeah. All right, I'd like to announce the next presenters. Are you gonna be by yourself up here? Oh, there he is. There he is. Grace, so it's Alicia Ellis.
Yeah.
Alicia Ellis and Michael Cottrell. And their presentation is entitled Industry University Partnerships as a Pathway to International Graduate Students, Gaining Canadian Work Experience, a case study at the University of Saskatchewan. Thank you.
All right. Well, good morning, everybody. Pleasure to be here. So we'll start with 2 acknowledgements. First, we're gathered on the traditional and treaty territory of the Mississauga people who still occupy that territory. And the second acknowledgement is the quality of the presenters that went before us. Great presentation. We learned a lot. So just by way of introductions, I come from Ireland originally, came to Canada way back a long time ago. Was fortunate enough to get a PhD and then out high school for a while, and then fortunate to get a faculty position and a graduate chair in my department. So work closely with our graduate students, including international students. And Alicia is one of my doctoral students. So great pleasure to be sharing the research that Alicia will be engaging in as part of her PhD dissertation. So I'll turn it over to Alicia for introductions.
Thank you, Michael. Hi, everyone. So I'm probably the most fortunate presenter of all, because I have 2 supervisors with me, my own research supervisor, Michael, and my husband at the back. Who is also here, yes. And so we will be looking at, as Michael said, industry university partnership. Our focus is really on the crisis that Canada is now facing in regards to labor shortage. All right, so we just want to have a good conversation. We believe that it's a safe space for us to have this conversation. And as an international student, if you hear my voice elevated, it's not because I'm angry, it's because I'm very passionate about this particular topic. All right, so the crisis that we're now facing in Canada has to do a lot with the fact that Canada has an aging population and a low fertility rate. And as part of the mechanism or the strategy to fix that is to bring in immigrants. Also, we're looking particularly at international students, because international students are seen as an asset. They are able to easily transition into the workforce. All right, so this is even supported by a statement that was made by the Minister of Immigration recently in 2022, when they decided to expand or increase the number of hours that international students would have to work outside of Canada. And I just want to zoom in on the second part of his statement. By allowing international students to work more while they study, we can help ease pressing needs in many sectors across the country while providing more opportunities for international students to gain valuable Canadian work experience and continue contributing to short-term recovery and long-term prosperity. Now, international students come with a wealth of experience, qualification, knowledge, but the challenge is that for them to integrate into the workforce, they require Canadian work experience. Now, that Canadian work experience sometimes comes at a cost where as international students, despite our qualification, we're often not able to work in jobs that are in alignment with those qualifications. So in effect, we get the lower end jobs that will allow us to gain Canadian work experience.
And I would add to that, that the trend of looking to international students to fill labor shortages in Canada is, I think that's a national phenomenon.
Mm.
It's particularly important in Saskatchewan because of our unique demographic context. About 20% of our population is Indigenous. First Nations are Métis. And because of historical oppressions, some of the themes that were touched on earlier, Indigenous people have significantly lower educational achievements than the general population. And those chickens are coming home to roost in Saskatchewan. Disinvesting in Indigenous education, historic marginalization, and so on, now creating a situation where many of our working age population do not have the skills, qualifications to fill those positions. So I would say this phenomenon that we're looking at is common to all provinces, and I think most universities are being compelled to recruit international students for the same reason. So it's particularly important in Saskatchewan because of some of the historic dynamics, and as I say, some of the mistakes of the past now coming back to really hit home.
Right. Now, we have created an outline to help the guidance through the presentation. Now, as a true Jamaican, I will sprint through the first few sections. So I'll be looking at recent statistics, the policies that support international student workforce integration. I'll touch a little bit on the research design and the participants that are involved, and then I'll hand the baton over to Michael, who will look at anticipated findings as well as recommendation. Now, what you'll not see there is at the end, you'll take questions, and I'll ask the hard questions both to Michael. All right. So
we didn't cover that in our preparation.
So quickly, some of the important statistics. So 135% increase in international students enrollment. To date, Canada is ranked third in terms of the number of international students that are coming to the country behind the UK and the United States. Internationalization contributes, and this is $23.5 billion to the Canadian GDP. Right now in Canada, we're seeing an all-time high of job vacancies of close to 1 million jobs, and this is post-COVID as well. And what we notice as well in the literature is that the students who are coming to Canada have indicated among the top 5 reasons for choosing to study in Canada is because they believe that the program that they are studying would give them the opportunity to work while they're studying. And we're saying that these linkages are inadequate in Saskatchewan. Over 40% of international students experience challenges finding employment, 4 in 10. And they have cited that the main reason why this is happening, or the barrier for that, is because they don't have the requisite Canadian work experience. Canada has an aging population, getting older, so more than 1 in 5 working Canadians are approaching retirement age. Another important statistics, as in 2020, Canada also experienced the lowest fertility rate. So we're not having babies as much as we used to. All right, so just a quick look at some of the policies that support workforce integration. And remember that we're talking about international students' workforce integration, given the strategic role that international students play in the development, the growth and development of Canada's economy. And yes, the work permit, and this is what will allow students, once they're eligible, to work while they study. All right. And as I mentioned before, international students can work on campus up to 40 hours off campus. Well, this was recently changed in 2022 where we can work over 20 hours. Initially, it was just a maximum of 20 hours. We now can work more than 20 hours off campus jobs. 2008, there is a Canada Express class stream where immigrants who are skilled workers, they can apply for their permanent residency through this stream. Then you have the postgraduate work permit. It's another popular one that international students do have. And this is for persons who would have completed their program. This stream allows you to, after you have completed your studies, to remain in Canada and to work while pursuing your permanent residency. And you also have the provincial nominee program, which is very popular for immigrants, particularly in Saskatchewan. This is the easiest province to gain your PR there. So once you don't even have to finish your program after once you're eligible, then you can apply through this stream to gain your PR. All right, and as I said, because international students are critical to the development and the economic prosperity of the country, the government at the provincial as well as the federal level recognize what is referred to as education nexus, Michael, that there are a number of students were leaving after graduation in large numbers. So a number of these policies were developed, implemented to offer students an opportunity to remain in Canada because it is felt that the students can provide greatly to the economy and fill the gaps that exist in terms of the workforce. Michael, would you jump in here or is
Sure. Sure. So the proposed research design case study, for the classic case study using mixed methods, documentary analysis, one-on-one interviews, focus groups, and Lucy's identified what she calls four people in the conversation: the international students, policy context, the institutional piece, and the industry partners. And very interesting to hear our previous speaker talk about the university industry partnerships, because we don't have such in Saskatchewan. And I think that's the power of this research, is that can actually move forward some of those relationships between the institutions and the industry.
okay? And you'll continue with
For sure, for sure. So data is very, very embryonic yet. We've just done some kind of piloting interviews and data collection, but we can see some pretty clear findings coming out of it. And I think the most surprising one is, for a wealthy country like Canada, for which immigration is so important, but just a great lack of strategic thinking, action, and policy in this particular area. So we have, we work with fantastic students from all over the world who come to our province, who graduate, and then who are not able to find work so there's a brain gain that we get from bringing them, but then there's a brain drain when they go to Alberta or British Columbia or other Canadian provinces. So that lack of kind of strategic thinking, policy, practice, and so on, I think is the most surprising finding that we've come up with so far. And a logical antidote to that is to create within our programs strategic partnerships that would include internships as part of the coursework or as part of the degree work that our students would engage in, so that those connections with industry are created before they graduate. And then once they graduate, they have those personal connections and practical partnerships to call on. And I'm pleased to say that, in partly in response to the work of Alicia and other international students, that we are just now reconfiguring our doctoral courses to incorporate some of these things.
Yeah.
Internships, experiential learning classes, those kinds of things, and we see the benefit of the kind of the real world learning that happens on the job as part of our academic programs. Yeah, so internship programs, some of our programs do currently have internships, but very small number. And it's still not yet integrated into policy at our institution. So it's very much been hit on this. And we do want to create that better connection, those relationships with employers. So I guess what we're talking about, and we're not new, we're the first to make this observation, is a transformation in the purpose of universities. Historically, universities were constructed as creators of knowledge, often with a very, very domestic focus, and we're seeing that role now transform to being international agents in the recruitment and satisfaction of critical skill shortages within the economy. And that's a pretty fundamental transformation in the purpose of the universities and in the purpose of the academy. And I think what we see at our institution is a reluctance on the part of some of our senior leaders to sort of get their hands dirty, to actually go out and make those connections with industry. They're still very much committed to what I would say is an outdated view of the university as simply a creator of knowledge. But we're being pushed by policy, by federal policy, by provincial policy, by industry needs, and by kind of glaring gaps within our local economy. So this issue is not just abstract or theoretical. It has very, very significant implications for economic well-being, which obviously then translate into social cohesion and all of those other things. So yeah, so our recommendations are mainly around developing the kind of partnerships that the previous speaker talked about, industry university partnerships, and academics becoming more aware of I would say the needs of students, in this case international students, not just to get an education, but also to have the experience that will allow them to then secure good employment, to realize their dreams, to realize the dreams from international students. And clearly, if we can do a better job in this, the benefits will trickle down to people of Saskatchewan also. So we anticipate long-term significant and practical benefits from the research that AEC is engaged in. So big thanks for your attention, and looking forward to questions and conversations.